plans of the wicked have robbed me, but I have not forgotten thy law. At midnight will I rise to give thanks unto thee because of thy righteous judgments, O Lord. I am a companion of all them that fear thee, and of them that keep thy precepts. The earth, O Lord, is full of thy mercy. Teach me thy statutes. Thou hast dealt well with thy servants, O Lord, according to thy...
Hey, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. Continuing today in the book of Proverbs. Let's see here. All right. And we were reading, with wisdom speaking, personified in the feminine, speaking as a mother to her son, and also as a father to the son, and eventually, I think. But unless we think there's some sort of shift, I haven't detected one. So, where should we pick up? Just verse 1? I think so. My son, if thou wilt receive my words, and hide my commandments with thee, so that thou incline thine ear unto wisdom, and apply thine heart to understanding. Yea, if thou criest after knowledge, and liftest up thy voice for understanding, if thou seekest her as silver, and searchest for her as for hid treasures, then shalt thou understand the fear of the Lord, and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord giveth wisdom. Out of his mouth cometh knowledge and understanding. He layeth up sound wisdom for the righteous. He is a buckler to them that walk uprightly. He keepeth the paths of judgment, and preserveth the way of his saints. Then shalt thou understand righteousness and judgment and equity, yea, every good path. When wisdom entereth into thine heart, and knowledge is pleasant unto thy soul, discretion shall preserve thee, understanding shall keep thee, to deliver thee from the way of the evil man, from the man that speaketh froward things, who leaveth the paths of uprightness, who leave the paths of uprightness to walk in the ways of darkness, who rejoice to do evil, and delight in the frowardness of the wicked, whose ways are crooked, and they froward in their paths. To deliver thee from the strange woman, even from the stranger which flattereth with her words, which forsaketh the guide of her youth, and forgetteth the covenant of her God. For her house inclineth unto death, and her paths unto the dead. None that go unto her return again, neither take they hold of the paths of life. That thou mayest walk in the way of good men, and keep the paths of the righteous. For the upright shall dwell in the land, and the perfect shall remain in it. But the wicked shall be cut off from the earth, and the transgressors shall be rooted out of it. Okay. As I reread the last part, there was nothing I thought except when I was talking about, there are various kinds of wisdom, right? We talked about the hidden wisdom, like the true wisdom of God, but there's also wisdom which is wise in the world, as the children of this world are wiser in their generations than the children of light. And you could call, and there's also sound wisdom and unsound wisdom. Unsound wisdom is something that sometimes seems wise or sounds wise, but in actuality is not wise. You know, and there you go. I'm not gonna. I thought of examples, but I don't want to. The examples that occurred to me were just too current of any, and I don't want to dwell too much on that. That was not even current of any. It was past of any. Anyways, but just as a thought. But then to deliver thee from the strange woman, we'd come to the idea of the woman. We talked about how this strange woman who forsakes the guide of her youth, that has to be the sort of apostate woman of Israel, who is, or for us, it'd be, you know, we live in a country that is a Christian country for the most part. I don't mean the government is a Christian government. We've never had a Christian government. I don't necessarily want a Christian government. I want the government to just do its duty. You know, it's not supposed to be doing religion like it is now. I mean, literally. they're having ideological purges in the military and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of religious territory. But and that separation of church and state has to be reestablished. We can't have rainbow flags flying. That would be like flying the cross in the same place as the American flag, like the Christian international flag or something. I don't know. You see the rainbow flag, the American flag next to each other, like on equal footing. And even in the more place of prominence, I've seen it. So that's just absurd. But the point is, that all represents a perversion of the guidance of the covenant of God, which has been given us in this country in many ways, because it's been a Christian country, meaning the people are Christian. There's a Christian culture, a Christian milieu, as they call it. You know what I mean? There's like, people who don't even understand where it comes from will talk about going the extra mile and other things that come from the Bible that people don't have any idea where it comes from, the idea. But it's part of the culture. It's just built into everything. And people don't even understand how deeply that fabric is woven. But that fabric is just it's an inanimate fabric. Each individual is living their lives in the midst of it. So it's possible for someone in the midst of a thing that says, oh, this is the way you ought to be, to say like, well, why do we have to? Says who? I mean, I haven't seen God lately, have you? And so, oh, come on. Don't be so uptight. There are seductive women, women, a lot of times guys fantasize about being seduced by women. I know when I was young, I did. But honestly, every time it happened, it was creepy, and I fled from the situation. Not necessarily every single time, but most of the times, as far as like, any time of significance. I mean, all I mean is like whatever. Anyways, there's flattery that women use, and then they use that against you and inflame your passions to get you to do things. And a lot of times this is a tool they use against men in powerful places. Even they use sex and things like, even with like, remember there was that thing with Trump where there was supposedly some P-tape, right? And they were talking about some embarrassing sexual material, right? And not that that's what this is about. It's not just pragmatic. Oh, you could get blackmailed. Yeah, that's one of the worst things. You can get sexually blackmailed. That's pretty bad. And because that's the thing, is like you start down the path of sexual deviancy. I've been a bit down that path myself. I never deny it. I can't. The Lord would smite me, But you head down that path. You listen to the flattery, and here's the thing. Like, one of the things I noticed when I was really young, when I first saw pornography, which wasn't, technically pornography, I guess. Some people don't consider Playboy pornography. I do. Because, I remember looking through it, and the women, the way they looked at you was so seductive with their eyes. I mean, like, no woman had ever looked me in the eyes like that in my life. And I was only 5 years old. You know what I mean? But like to be looked at with that sort of like hungry for you look in their eyes. I mean, the women actually posed for these photos. It's like, this is a very evil thing they've done in unleashing this on so many men, especially young boys. Because they flatter with their eyes. They say, I want you. When it's like they're not looking at you. They're just staring into a camera, into an empty abyss. They're looking at dollars and cents and the money they're going to be paid for whoring themselves out. Because pornography is just prostitution where, okay, maybe there's no, it's like, if you, it depends. Well, hardcore pornography is definitely prostitution, actually. It's prostitution, just put a camera in there. As long as you put a camera in there and both people are paid, or I guess it's okay, right? That's not, okay, whatever. That somehow doesn't become human trafficking. Okay. I see we're working with logic now. And that's been the problem ever since they legitimized, what was it? Not profanity. What is it? The pornography, of course, but the word I wanted was like The word that describes, what is it, obscenity? It's the word that describes, maybe it's obscene images, maybe that's what I'm looking for, that are, pornographic type stuff used to be, you couldn't make stuff like that. You weren't supposed to photograph and make stuff like that. It's technically illegal. And it's probably a good idea, I guess, don't, or tear that stuff up. And to have it be just like free for everybody is insane, actually. Because they used to consider it something people should be protected from, because some things should be private. But anyways, the covenant of God and all, the women that turn aside from God, from godliness, and that usually imply, this implies, yes, there is a seductiveness. In fact, that gets later on, we get in deeper into the strange woman. That gets later on where it explicitly explains the seductive aspect of it. And I don't want to dwell on that too much, because that's not the only way in which we can look at that. Because it's not just a woman who wants to get you, who wants to use your passion about sex to manipulate you into something and whatever, and she's ungodly, and what she wants you to do is ungodly, right? And contrary to the covenant, right? And against what you are as a Christian and all that. There's that in the sexual sense, but there's also that just in the intellectual sense, in the seduction of your mind, to seduce you away from the simplicity that is in Christ. Because there is physical seduction, but there's also mental seduction. You can be corrupted from within with cunning arguments, smooth things, flatteries. That's one of the things I noticed about, that I disliked about my first serious teacher, which was Arnold Murray, in the Shepherd's Chapel, which I repudiate. I've done that many times. Repudiate. That's good enough, isn't it? I've spoken out against, not only repudiate, I have a whole web page dedicated to saying why I don't believe in that. But anyways, one of the things I disliked, other than the doctrinal aspects, was I noticed after a while that he was subtly abusive. Not so subtly. It was subtle to me, because I was ignorant and young. But if I were like, now, sharpen up for me, people, and if you understand what I'm talking about, you're, that means you're one of God's elect. My students are pretty sure. There was these little flattering things that went out there, and there's always like subtle cues. I haven't even written about it, but I saw it as sort of a sense of abuse, like abusing the trust and trying to infuse them with confidence by saying things like, what was another thing? It's like, what was my, not about the salary. It was something he used to say about, whatever, Lord, take away my ministry before I would ever misteach anyone. Like announcing that to people. If I were to say that, I would take that to God privately. You know what I mean? Like to wave it around your face to try to say, look how virtuous I am. It's like, I hope that, whatever virtue I have is about on display as it could be. I more would rather glory in my weaknesses, which I never saw him ever do. He would joke about having flaws and making mistakes. I've actually made them in front of you and acknowledged them real time. So that's that. I didn't put myself up here as some sort of Moses anyways, but and I don't say that to flatter you or to create greater confidence. Just because I don't think I'm Moses, well, then don't think I secretly am, because I'm not. Don't think that's just me being modest. No, it's not. I don't think, and I just mean that because one of the other pastors I served under, Mark Nutting, used to talk about Moses syndrome. And that was the desire to have one guy lead everybody. And he thought it was very prevalent in church too. The people always coming to the pastor for all their problems. Always. I'm kind of glad I don't get peppered with tons of questions. That's kind of cool. I like that. In the way I thought there would be questions. It's like people always have questions, but it's like, my followers don't have a lot of questions. They've been listening to me for a while. When new people come around, I suppose they will have questions. There have been some questions. And not that I love answering questions at times, depending on the subject, obviously. Some questions, like how do I fix whatever it was? I was trying to think of something that broke sometime. How do I fix that septic tank, whatever. That's the question I don't really care to try to figure out how to answer, but sometimes you have to. All right, so they flatter with the stranger, because there are some I want to think that's stranger as the strange idea that infused that woman with the notion that she should forsake the guidance of that she had received in her youth through the covenant which had been related to her, the covenant of God. You know what I'm saying? The spirit which which led her to behave this way. You know what I mean? Because you don't just wake up one day and go a whoring. You know what I mean? There's some spirit that leads you mentally, intellectually through a series of decisions that bring you to a place. I mean, generally speaking. I mean, sometimes you do just end up in weird places, but it's usually that often is not through your own direct action. You get caught up in some circumstance or something that's beyond your control. But a lot of things like this, it is a choice. It's a series of choices people make. As far as like, how does it come about? And it's an interesting thing. It's an important question because, every strange woman running around out there might have been someone's hopeful daughter one day in the past. And that's why I've talked about that. It makes me think of like when I talked about the apologist, and I don't mind using his name if I can remember it, because it's a lesson, it's a case in point. But maybe it'll come to me. If it comes to me, it comes to me. I'm not gonna search for it like that. If the Lord hid it from me for that long, I'll just leave it be. Because God bless him. It's a tragic thing when you try so hard to raise a child. And I should be closer on the mic. Sorry, it all sounds tin canny. I realize that now. I'm going to turn the volume down slightly and I'll be closer on the mic. But anyways, his daughter, he raised his daughter. He'd go places, and I read her story about how she'd gone to apostasy. She'd written about it. And it was her first year at college. There's just a couple questions got asked, and she was just sort of like, yeah, and she questioned it, and then the whole thing sort of fell apart. And he had been able to take her around to churches and ask her questions like, what is the hypostatic union? Anybody here can tell us what the hypostatic union is? Now, I looked it up in the past, and I think it has to do with the Trinity. That it's the technical description of that, I think, or maybe I'm totally off my mind. I don't remember. But she knew she could rattle it off. And they'd all be marveling at who this young girl, and he'd be like, I'd like to introduce you to my daughter, and they'd all clap, right? Great piece of showmanship, right? But when you turn your children into little pieces of showpieces for God, sometimes it doesn't work out so good. And so, at college, she went away, and she talks about, now I have sex with my boyfriend. I hope my dad didn't do it. My dad, I feel bad, blah, 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 whatever. I forget all the things. Talking openly about having disregarded everything her father tried to instill in her. Or what? I don't know what he tried to instill in her. A bunch of doctrines? Because he didn't try to whatever. I don't know. I see it as tragic. Maybe I'll have, I don't know. There's all kinds of tragic stories. It's like I don't like to point fingers at people. But I took a different path, and I'll let you know what happens, okay? I hope I marry my daughter off aversion to her husband. In fact, that's the only way. That's one of the things I told her. If you want a white wedding, if that's something you care about, maybe you don't care about it. Maybe you don't care about it. I certainly don't care about it. I don't care about paying for some big white wedding. I only have to do it once. I only got one daughter. But if you want that, you will remain a virgin until your wedding. And I will talk to your husband about it and say, if she's not a virgin, this white wedding is a farce. I mean, otherwise tell him. It's like, because I'm not going to, even if he knows, that's fine. I'm not walking you down through this charade of purity and stuff. I suppose unless you're marrying the man you lost your virginity with, then I'll go through the charade. I'll put, you can put the white wedding on if that's the testimony. If you're marrying, okay, then it's like, okay, you're taking my white virgin and marrying her. And even though that's already a done deal, I'll still put the white dress on because I'm giving the white one to you. It's like, yeah, fine. Because I don't like all this, like, these women getting wedding dresses in their 30s after, they got a body count of 15 or 16 and whatever. And it's like, yeah, okay. It gets to be a bit gross, in my opinion. Like, just the whole putting on a white dress. You want to marry somebody, just go get married. And I know young people who were very worthy of such a ceremony, and there should have been a lot of hoopla around them and a big party. But you know what? They didn't get it. They didn't get it. And it's a funny irony and testimony against all those who put on white when they're filthy. And that's it. And I don't think it's just a one-way street either. It's like I expect all my young men to wait for their brides. Because there's no point. Because you know why? Because spending time with women who are not the kind you can marry, and you got to marry a godly woman. Period. Especially if you have any sense about you, you marry a godly woman. Otherwise, you're gonna, like, what do you think you're gonna get kids who really adhere to the guidance of their youth and remember the covenant of their God? Do you think that's the kind of children you're gonna produce with some unbeliever who you slept with on the first night after meeting them at a bar? Or after the first week, after the second time you met him in a bar, oh, aren't you? You play hard to get, don't you? I can't say I was any better. I can't say I ever went home with anyone from a bar and slept with them, to tell you the truth. I never did that. Nope, never did that. Never happened. I wanted to, though. So whatever. I count myself guilty because I lusted after it. I was looking for that. And the truth is I probably could have if I hadn't been just so darn picky. If I hadn't been such a snob, which is true. I never denied that. It's like I've chastised myself many times. It's like the Lord, to be better, because for the Lord's sake. And sometimes that's what it takes. You have to, there's all kinds of experiences we all have. And it can humble us. It can make us proud. But it also, sometimes, the pride and the fall makes you humble. Her house inclineth to death. Yeah, you go to her house and you sleep with her in the paths of the dead. But there's also the sleep with in the sense of you get in bed with the wrong ideas. You get in bed with ideas that are contrary to Christian teaching. And you forget, like, what am I supposed to be doing as a Christian? How am I supposed to be living my life as a Christian? What is the covenant that Christ has made with me? In his blood. He died for my sins. Now, what happens next? I think it's funny that the fact that is my salvation, that my faith in his blood, just my simple faith, that makes me saved. There are some people who are so vainglorious, or what's a better word for it? In a sense, like that they're so desirous of showing their like rock hard knowledge. Like, this is where the letter kills. The letter kills when you think like this. Well, I don't have to do anything. And since I don't have to do anything, I'm going to make a show of doing nothing. I'm not going to be baptized. I'm not going to try to do any good works. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to try to stop sinning. I'm just going to continue to have faith in Jesus Christ, to believe in that God rose him from the dead. I know that's true, but I just have other things I'd like to do. And I don't have to, because I know, like, you think you just do that? Now, I don't know anyone who would elucidate it on those terms very well. Maybe there are some. Shall we sin the more that grace may abound? But there is a spirit of that. I know, because I was possessed of it. When I was young, I didn't think my sin mattered much, because I thought, well, Christ forgave it, so go ahead and do it. You know what I mean? Because it seemed impossible to stop. And that was because I grew up in an environment where everyone had taken that same general view. I grew up in the ungodly America that raised this ungodly generation. But that doesn't mean you can't call us out of that stuff. Hey, still quite a few. It's not like we're defeated yet. But man, the last generation just wet the bed as far as I'm concerned. I don't know how am I doing? Not pretty good, I think. I think we're losing here right now. Whatever. Our weapons are mighty through God, right? Our house inclineth unto life, and our paths unto the living. You want to go to where the living are. Follow the guidance of your youth. As to me, this speaks to me deeply as a Christian who was a Christian from his youth, who cannot remember the time when I started believing. I don't remember starting to believe in Jesus ever. I don't ever remember starting to believe in Jesus. It was just, right? A lot of people, I'm sure. And then they had like get saved. Maybe if you were in church, though, they made you get saved later, right? So you could, oh, are you sure? You know, it's like step forward or something like that and commit. And like, even though you actually had saving faith since you were like 5. You know what I mean? But it's a cut. I mean, as far as like, if it be truly saving faith. Because there's something like, I don't know, we believe things. But do we, like saving faith, do I believe them to act on them? And then it's like to act on them, oh, am I starting to talk about works? Well, no, not really. Because it is not of works, lest any man should boast. But don't boast in not doing anything about what Jesus did for you. That's folly. You know, I purposefully, it's not that I haven't had a chance to be baptized. Oh, whatever. It's not like there's a fire alarm. You gotta get baptized. If you died tomorrow, wanting to be baptized, I don't think you're going, oh, you're not saved. No, I don't teach that. Right? Because it's about your intention. It's like I said, and if you want to prove a point, do I think that means you're not saved? Not necessarily, but I'm just saying, I don't like your attitude. And I would say you should go to the Lord with that attitude and see what he thinks. I'm not here to judge another man's servant. You think that's the way to go? I can't teach that. Like, oh, no, purposely don't get baptized. Purposely, no, don't use oil. You don't need oil. You don't even lay your hands on people. That's all superstition. Just pray. It's like, or like, oh, well, healing's over. Actually, it's like, just go to the doctor. He gave us doctors now. We don't need the Spirit of the Lord to heal us. I don't know. Like, there's a whole spirit that leads astray from Christ. There's a sexual nature to it because it's seductive. It always leads the way with temptation, with pleasure. And that's why it's personified as a strange woman. The strange man wants to take you to violence and to gain. The strange woman wants, she forgets about the covenant. The other guy, he's led about by just his sheer greed. That's what makes him forget. His sheer avarice, his desire to conquer and possess. But the woman has a little different way to death. The feminine aspect has a different path to death. This is something we know. We talk about toxic masculinity, but they never talk about toxic femininity. Actually, they do, but not the same people. It's other people who talk. Some people talk about toxic masculinity. Other people talk about toxic femininity. It's just toxic human behavior. But there's a difference in the nature of the male and the female. But they're not so hard and cut and dry because, there's I do think there's an overlap. Some women are a little more butch than guys, and some guys are a little more soft than others. But as far as basic character traits, prevalence on one side or the other, we're talking. Just as far as what we're talking about, the reason you can say that is because, they're a little out of characteristic for their type. For a man, he's a little too sensitive. So it's like, that's unusual for a man. It doesn't make him a woman. It just makes him a sensitive man because he's got a bit of that feminine aspect in him. Both aspects, male and female are not so different that we don't have aspects that overlap. It's kind of ridiculous to say because one thing is more prevalent on one side that when it crops up heavily in someone on the other side, that suddenly that means that their body is not the right body. But the point is there's an importance to the masculine and the feminine. And the overlap is less interesting, honestly, than the actual difference. That's why it's used, because when you distill it, there's an actual distilled difference that you can say, no, this is the difference, not 100%, but 99%. She has a house that does not lead you well, the bad paths. You want to be led on every good path. And that doesn't necessarily mean there's more than one way to heaven or something like that. It just means as you go through life, you have choices of different paths that you could take. That don't have to do with salvation, just with living in the world. Because this is not necessarily this is not about eternal salvation, but we will use it as a metaphor for eternal salvation because obviously some of the language here doesn't really fit in with Christian doctrine if you were to try to just read it literally as a passage in the New Testament. This would not work in the New Testament because it wouldn't ring right. But we'll do that right now. And we have a full half hour to do that. Oh, cool. None that go on to her return again, neither take the hold of the paths of life. Well, again, I would say that's a poetic hyperbole. It's like once you give yourself over to things, and especially when you're talking about apostasy from the faith, yeah, it's like, according to the New Testament in the book of Hebrews, it says once they have, well, if you have tasted the good world to come and of the powers, the quote is the exact wording of it. The powers of the world to come, the good word of God. It gives this high bar of like, I think of it as myself. I've had all these experiences with God. He's led me so far. For me right now to turn away from God, for me, I'm not talking about for you. I don't know where you are. Don't apply with. For me, if I were to turn my back on God, yeah, I can't imagine how I would get back again. Like not just to go sin or even to do something willful or like deny Christ like Peter did. I don't mean stuff like that. I don't mean mistakes, errors, sins. I mean to say, you know what? I don't believe. I'm going to follow my own will. I'm going to follow false gods. I'm going to go follow perversity and hedonism again, like I started to in my youth when I still believed in God, but also I was actually living out a hedonistic lifestyle or attempting to with all my might. I definitely lived out many aspects of hedonism. It just wasn't, I can't, I'm glad I don't have, I don't have to conceal that it wasn't like some, like all this sex, it's like I've always said, while I was very seduced by all that, I never really participated in much of anything. Like, well, the whole time I never had sex with anyone the whole time I was at college, like at that college. Yeah. But that's not to say I was living an innocent life there, not at all. Because there's other way, there's much more or less innocent things to do. Neither take hold of the paths of life. Yeah, but if we give ourselves complete, well, the thing is, that's the thing. Christ saves us out of those situations. When people get into impossible situations. That's when I turned to Christ. I had given heed to the seducing spirit. To tell you the truth, and I wanted her so bad. I didn't have sex with any girls, but I had all kinds of dirty magazines in my dorm room. Right, I was going out to bars. I was underage, but I would lie to get in. I would bluff. I would bully my way in actually because there was college kids, some of the bouncers, and I was kind of a big kid, and I was bold and willing to lie and stuff, right? What else did I don't believe it was mostly just excess, drugs, alcohol, lying. I didn't go to class. I totally skipped out on that. Wasted all the money my parents were paying. I blew it in riotous living. When I came back though, and then what happened? Okay, let me tell you the rest of the story. But it basically follows the prodigal son story because one night I was just so blasted with drugs. And I've done a number of 6-foot bongs, and I had done LSD that night, and a whole 6-pack of Little Mickey's cream ale, and I remember, and that for me was not a lot of alcohol, it was all the other stuff and the acid. I remember I felt like I had to leave the place where I was at a party, and I left. I went back to my dorm room alone, and I remember I was in the room and I thought, I'm gonna die here right now because I never felt so. It was just really bad, and I felt really bad, and then I called on God because I said, if you will just get me out of this right now, I will serve you for the rest of my life. And then I immediately felt better, and so the next day I called my father and I said, send me my Bibles. I didn't bring them to college, and he did. And I started reading them, though first I asked the King James Bible, but I couldn't read it. Then I said, send me that Living Bible, and I read that, and then I worked between the two. And that summer I went home and I found Arnold Murray. But, which was whatever. It's like, like I said, it's like learning to swim by someone throwing you into the deep end, and there's an old man in there, and he's trying to drown you. That's learning the Bible with Arnold Murray. Okay, I'm just kidding. That's a little tongue-in-cheek, because he wasn't that awful, but, in some ways he is. Not for me, because that old man couldn't pull me down, okay? But he pulls a lot of other people down. I shouldn't be so kind. He leads a lot of people astray. Yeah, so I don't like it. And he doesn't lead them anymore. He's dead, but his ministry still does. Not to the degree it used to, thankfully. I don't give myself any credit. I just think that's because he died. And it's hard to be popular when you're dead. It is. Like since the time Elvis died, his popularity is still kind of interesting, but it's declined. Just like everybody. Think about George Washington. He's not held in the same esteem he was held 50 or 100 or 150 years ago. By some, yes, he's still held in high esteem, but by others, in general, the population that esteems him, the percentage of a whole, is down. So, to take hold of the paths of life, to do this as a man through wisdom, through your own power, pretty much impossible. Once you go down the path of folly, it's hard to just dig yourself out by your bootstraps. Is it impossible? Well, it's like, let me tell you what. It's one of those things where it's like, hey, can you get yourself out of quicksand? Yeah, and there's techniques. It's like, do you want to try like alone in the woods with no one around and no safety? You know what I mean? You want to try? You know what I mean? Like, can you wrestle an alligator? Oh, sure, but like in a controlled environment. What do you want? Just go out into the Nile maybe and not knowing how many gators are in the water and try to wrestle one? So to walk in the ways of good men, again, you gotta understand this is relative. There's none good but God. When we talk about good men, we're talking about men that are not so bad. Men that are that fear God and that take heed to their doings and don't do really bad things. Don't lie, cheat, steal, don't hurt one another, don't spend all day drunk. It's just like people who are keeping the paths of righteousness in life, walking in the way that good men walk, good men. Let's just call it good men. There's none good but God. But if we're going to talk about men in terms of, okay, what's good men and bad men? Because, even in the New Testament, it talks about, good men. Good men is a relative term. We can't think of mankind as being inherently good. I remember Bill Cosby even pointed out in his comedy routine, I know he's out of favor now, but whatever, but like how he was saying in Genesis, says all those things were good, but not when he made man. It was good. I can't do it good. That's a terrible Bill Cosby imitation. I was trying to do the pudding pop thing, but I can't do it. All right. Anyways, mankind has the capacity for evil. And unfortunately, we tend to choose evil rather than good. Actually, it's not that we choose evil more often than good. It's just that we choose evil at all instead of good. That's the problem. That's the thing. Because there's not a good man upon the earth. Actually, it says, not a just man upon the earth that doeth good and sinneth not. That's Ecclesiastes chapter something or other. You can look it up in the King James. Not a just man upon the earth that doeth good and sinneth not. From Ecclesiastes. There just really isn't. So whenever it's spoken of with that caveat. That it's not men who are truly good, but men who wish to be good. Men who are trying to be good and succeeding at being good, at least to the degree that they are not a menace to society. You know what I mean? Things that cause society to break down and the righteous can't even operate. Because you can't trust who you're dealing with because everyone's a liar. Everyone's a cheater. No one fears God. For the upright shall remain in the land, the perfect. Let me see that. Okay. For the upright shall remain in the land, and the perfect shall dwell in the land. And the perfect shall remain in it. Again, perfect. Perfection is something we strive for. God doesn't want people. And again, remember the standards they have are also like, it wasn't until Jesus came around that he was saying like, hey, to look on a woman, to even lust after her, you've already committed adultery. Because he wants you to guard your thoughts. A lot of times, people think if I just guard my actions, that's fine. But as you allow your mind to be seduced, your actions will soon follow. You can't dwell on thoughts of sexual immorality without doing something about them. It's not necessarily you're going to go out and see a prostitute, but either you're going to start looking at pornography, and then if you start looking at pornography, you're going to start potentially masturbating. and stuff like that. And then, whatever. To me, that's bad enough. Bad enough that you're already looking at things you shouldn't. That's already bad enough. You don't have to get to the point of, because we hold ourselves to a high standard because we want to be like Christ. We want to take captive every thought. So I have to I have to be critical of every thought. Every thought. And it's like, oh, just because you didn't act on it, you can say you didn't sin. Well, yeah, I didn't. Well, maybe that makes me a good person for not acting on that thought. I mean, good person, quote unquote. Good with scare quotes around it. Good person. I'm a good person. Okay, yeah. Well, because we keep the paths of uprightness, the ways of walking right. Like, I don't think of myself as a good man. I think there are good men who are better men than me. I'm not kidding. That's not even like false modesty. In many moral ways, I have many superiors. I have my own gifts. They're different. I think of myself as not so bad. But because, it's like, you could, Paul always talked about himself as chief among sinners. I'm not chief among sinners. And I'm not chief among the righteous. But I'm not so bad. And that's where I reckon myself. I'd like to be good. I'd like to be better. I like to keep the paths of righteousness more perfectly. Because this is all, ultimately to dwell in God's land forever. The lesson that the fear of God teaches is that if you want to dwell in the land, the upright, that's what's going to happen. The upright will eventually, the earth is for the upright. Period. A sin-filled earth is totally unacceptable to God. It always has been. From the beginning, he declared his displeasure at it. He cast them out of the garden. He destroyed the earth with a flood. A sin-filled earth is not an acceptable eternal outcome. The earth must be filled with righteousness, with uprightness. This is the land, but I'm sure that's the same word that they use for earth, haaretz, probably. Yep. And God created the heavens and the earth, right? And the thing is, the word for earth and the flood covered the earth, right? The thing about the flood, trying to say the earth, like the flood of Noah, wasn't global, and I think I talked about this when we did Genesis. When you try to say it wasn't global, it's really hard to say that when the water covered the mountains by like a certain amount. I mean, that's a lot of water over the mountains. So it's hard to say like, oh, that was local. Well, a local flood has to be kind of bordered by mountains. But maybe the local mountains were covered? It said all the high mountains. So I don't know. You can go back to my account and, on that story to, see what I have to say about it. Like I said, I certainly don't think... I think Noah is a critical story in the Bible. It's an important story. It's like because Christ himself mentions it. But it's like, it's critical not in its historicity, but it's in its meaning. In its meaning. Which is what I just said. That God does not want an earth filled with sin and violence. And that's what makes me start... not exactly freaking out, because it's like... At some point, I'm like, okay, my flesh starts to get a little terrified. And then the Spirit of God in me encourages me, well, be of good cheer. Lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. When you see things happening that concern you. Not that the earth hasn't been filled with more violence. But I just feel like the potential right now for violence in the earth is so great. Like, think about even in America, there's such a strong feeling of the potential for civil war among some people. I really don't feel it. Like when I go to town and I see the people who I'm supposedly supposed to have a war with, I don't really feel like I want to go to war with them. They seem like nice people. I don't care. They have pink hair. I don't care. I don't mind. People don't war. It's like I never judge someone by a book by its cover entirely. But I mean, you don't judge a book by its cover, whether it's a good book. But you do judge it like, well, this is the genre. You know what I mean? If it's going to be a good book, it's going to be in this genre. It's like, wow, I've never seen a good book in that genre. You know what I mean? What I mean is like, you see someone, like I've seen guys covered with tattoos and in leather, and I've seen good books in that genre, so to speak. Meaning good men who, came up to Christ. They didn't necessarily, they were Christians who decided to take that path, but like, it was sort of like, or whatever. I don't know. I don't have any tattoos. I do wear leather, but only the leather jacket. And I don't wear leather pants and studded wristbands and stuff like that. But I don't necessarily judge someone who does. You know what I mean? But what I'm saying, there's certain affectations of people that give you an impression of them. You know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, so when someone goes around like with their hair dyed like a rainbow, it's like you're inclined to think they're portraying a particular genre of opinion. And I'm not, but you know, I like to be civil to everybody because I want to portray the love of Christ to all. I don't want to be like just cold to someone because they look like they might have a different point of view on life than I do. My whole point is to reach them with the love of Christ, not to turn the cold shoulder. And certainly not to go to war with them. I think that's about, except by the Spirit. I'm at war with them already in the Spirit, not with them, but with the spirits that bind them. You know, I'm at war with the things, with the principalities and powers, the rulers of the darkness of this world that are oppressing all the people of the world and deceiving them with the lies that's being, you know, thrown out there through the media and all that stuff. And through just, the manipulation that people are being gone through with the algorithms and all that. Something, it's all concerning, but if it's, if it is, it's the end of the world, well, then that's like, I guess, okay, well, great. I guess that's it. I don't have to worry about what's going to be 20 years from now. It's like, I plan ahead because you should. I don't think that's wrong. You be wise in your generation. You don't want to be too wise. You could be wise as a serpent, but harmless as a dove. Also being wise in the things of the Lord and laying up your treasure where it really belongs. Being, depending on how, like I said, don't be the guy who hid his one talent in the earth and did nothing for God's kingdom. That we will never do. Not us. I can't imagine someone listening to this at any length for even, that they would take on that attitude. Unless they were just listening as a matter of curiosity and not a believer, right? Yeah, the perfect shall remain in it. That's this, be perfect as my heavenly Father is perfect, as your heavenly Father is perfect. God has called us to perfection. We speak the wisdom of God, which to them that are perfect, it said in 1 Corinthians chapter 2 or 3. Because among them, perfect, one says, well, they were complete in Christ. Because you are complete in Christ. Through your faith, that salvation is perfected. I can't watch videos on once saved, always saved, because they always want to go to I know about all those scriptures. But I don't see any of them saying losing salvation. There are people who went out from us because they were not of us. That's all it is. You talk about people losing their salvation. It's like, I don't believe it. Because it's it's the most oxymoronic, losing your salvation is an oxymoronic thing to say. You know what I mean? It's like saying unsaving your salvation. That's literally what they're saying. Getting unsaved from being saved. Getting unsaved from being saved. Having been saved, being unsaved. That's what they're really saying. It's not losing your salvation. No. I want you to just put this in the terms so we can understand exactly what you're saying. Becoming unsaved after having been saved. I'm now unsaved. Like I said, that's not once saved, always saved. It's not saved, never saved. If you are not saved on the day of judgment, you were never saved. You didn't lose anything. You thought you were saved. Because Jesus will say, I already have the scripture, I never knew. He's not going to say, I used to know you. Wait a second. Yeah, I remember when you taught, but you fell away. You denied me. I'm now denying you. That's not that group. That's not them. Yeah, they did deny him. That's also the same thing. They deny him. They, with their lips, they praise him, but with their works, they deny him. And that's what you have. You have people in church mouthing the songs. I know lots of people. I've seen plenty of examples. I've seen people on the internet who talk about how they go to church. They don't really believe, but they think it's good for their family. And it probably is, because they might pick up faith, unlike you. And I wish you would have faith. But, I kind of appreciate that. I used to be more, I am somewhat critical of that, but also I'm like, well, hey, maybe they will find something there. It's sad that they're in a place. I would like to think that if people were hanging around with me, that I would inspire them to faith. that they wouldn't continue in my church in unbelief. That should say something about your church. Like your church should be faith inspiring, not attendance inspiring. Look at all the programs we have. Come on. They got so many great programs for the kid. I got to come. And the band is great. I mean, they're talented. They got like 5 different singers. It's to Jesus, to bow. Yeah. But this is serious business. This is not like showman. You know, I mean, sometimes it's a show. Sometimes it's a show, I guess. Like on the cross, Jesus performed perfectly. You know. Into your hands I commit my spirits. The wicked shall be cut off from the earth, and the transgressors shall be rooted out of it. That's true. Ultimately, the wicked shall be cut off. Now, thankfully, well, like I said, through the revelation of the New Testament, we know that in spite of our sinful nature and the fact that we can't really do anything to save ourselves, that though we might use wisdom and improve our lives, we can never really make up for the sins of the past, and we never quite hammer out all the kinks in our character. So what do we do about that? We have no recourse, before God. Well, He can give us an act of mercy, and He does, but He demands that act of mercy be through our faith in His Son. I mean, He gives us mercy by us and it's not just by the act of us having faith. It's because that faith is actually the key. It's actually where God opens your heart to know Him, and He reveals Himself to you. That's why you believe. And people who God hasn't revealed Himself to them, but who say they believe, are quite numerous, because there's a lot of social pressure to believe. There's a lot of family pressure to believe. People don't say they believe, and they look at it and they say, well, okay, I believe, and they believe, but it hasn't entered into their heart. Just like the stony ground. I know, because as soon as the cares of this life or the riches, the deceitfulness of riches, right? They wither away. Or tribulation or persecution in the case of the stony ground, right? Or the thorny ground. The cares of this life, the deceitfulness of riches, the birds, the path. There's all kinds of paths. There's birds that come down from religious, but there's also the birds that come down to say, go this way, investment banking. I don't know. No, because I like on Skype this morning, there's like some like stock trading thing trying to get me to, get in their thing and get all, what am I going to do with my money? What am I going to do with I got all this money. What am I going to do with it? Oh, put your money with us. We want your money here. We want your money there so it can make more money. I get it. I'm putting my money into building things. That's all. Okay, so transgressors shall be rooted out of it. That's ultimately God's kingdom is a place. The land that in the world, does the world operate like this? Well, you know what? Some people do look at the history as the triumph, especially the past 2,000 years, as the slow triumph of what do we call it? Well, that peaceable system of liberty, which I enjoy. I certainly enjoy peace and liberty. And as that increases in the world, I think the state of man increases. But peace and liberty requires men who use wisdom, men who fear God. And that's the beginning of wisdom. If you don't fear God, you have zero wisdom, except wisdom that's probably derived from evil. You know what I mean? That's why I say our government operates on evil wisdom, a very Machiavellian evil wisdom. I don't know that you should necessarily run a state on the wisdom of Christ, but I don't know. Has it been tried? It's, we're too afraid. Okay, I get it. Yeah, the fearful and the unbelieving. No wonder. No wonder they don't make it to God's kingdom. The fearful and unbelieving. That's how I'm like, now that's what I know. The war, if war is coming, my weapons are ready, and they are mighty through God. They are not carnal, right? They are not carnal. We have weapons more powerful than all the nukes in the world, and then all the F-16s and MiG-25s or whatever. MiG-29, I think, is a famous number. Anyways, So we're not going to go into chapter 3 today. We'll end a little early, as we'll just pick it up clean at chapter 3, even though it's a continuation of the same thing, same thoughts. Anyways, so thanks for joining me. I look forward to being back again tomorrow. Until then, remember the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy.
The bands of the wicked have robbed me, but I have not forgotten thy law. At midnight will I rise to give thanks unto thee because of thy righteous judgments, O Lord. I am a companion of all them that fear thee, and of them that keep thy precepts. The earth, O Lord, is full of thy mercy. Teach me thy statutes. Thou hast dealt well with thy servants.